There are times we want to detect our screen orientation and resize our components accordingly. For example, let's set the width of this view to 100% and its height to 30%. So imagine this is a video player. In portrait mode, we want to have this video player on top. And in landscape mode, we want to have this take the entire screen. Right now, the height of this imaginary video player is always 30% of the height of the screen. This is where we need to detect the orientation of our screen and resize this component accordingly. And by the way, to rotate this iOS simulator, we hold down the command key and use the left or right arrows like this, okay? And for Android, we have this toolbar. Now look at the shortcut. On Mac, it's command and left. On Windows, it's probably control and left. I'm not entirely sure. So to support different orientations, first we go to app.json. By default, the orientation of our app is set to portrait, so it only supports the portrait mode. We can set this to landscape to only support the landscape mode, but this is not very common. We can also set this to default to support both modes. So let's save the changes. Now, to detect screen orientation, we're going to use this library called Hooks, developed by React Native Community. So on this page, you can see we have various hooks. Hooks are functions that bring extra capabilities to function components. For example, we can add state to a function component using one of the built-in hooks in React. If you're not familiar with hooks, I highly encourage you to watch the last section of my React course. I covered hooks in detail in that section. So here we have various hooks or various functions. All these hooks by convention start with use. For example, we have use back handler to work with the back button on Android. We have use camera roll, we have use dimensions, use device orientation, and so on. So first, let's install this library. Here in the terminal, we install @react-native-community/hooks. All right, this is installed. Now, let's go back to app.js. First, we should import use dimensions from @react-native-community/hooks. With this hook, we can get the correct dimensions of the screen, whether we are in portrait mode or in the landscape mode. This hook always returns the updated dimensions. This is one of the limitations of the dimensions API in React Native. So this is the preferred way to get the dimensions of the screen if you support multiple orientations. So let's do a console.log statement and call use dimensions. Save now. Here you can see the width of our screen is 414. Now, if I rotate this device, in the landscape mode, we get this new width, 896. So every time we rotate our device, our component gets recalled, and here we recalculate the updated dimensions. Now, we also have another hook for detecting the screen orientation, use device orientation. So let's call that here. So let's reload the app in portrait mode. Okay, so we get an object. This object has two properties. Landscape is false and portrait is true. Now, if I rotate the simulator, we get a new object. Now landscape is true and portrait is false. So to make this imaginary video player take the entire screen in landscape mode, we can write code like this. First, we call this function. Then we'll store the result in this object. Or we can use object destructuring here and pick the landscape property from that object. Now, we can calculate the height dynamically. So if you're in the landscape mode, we're going to set the height to 100%. Otherwise, we're going to set it to 30%. Take a look. So let's reload the app. All right. In landscape mode, our video player is taking the entire screen. We have these white edges. This is because we put this inside of a safe area view. Perhaps for a video player, this is not something we want to do. We want to make sure that the video player takes the entire screen. But let's not worry about it in this lesson. Now, if we rotate this to right, the height of our video player will be 30% of our screen height. So using the hooks in this library, we can get the dimensions and the orientation of our device. Now for the app that we're going to build in this course, we're not going to support the landscape mode. So I'm going to go back to app.json and set the orientation back to portrait.